Hey there, true believers. This is Chef Jack again with another round of Marvel vs. DC comic book reviews. The way it works is pretty simple. My brother Englentine and I have divided up every single title that Marvel and DC releases every week, and then we review each comic book, grading them all between 1 and 5 stars. Once we're done, we give every publisher 1 point for each star their books have earned, then divide those points up by the number of titles we've reviewed to determine a score per issue. And the publisher that has the highest score per issue for this week wins the round. See, it's pretty simple. So let's get started, shall we? This time around, we're taking a look at the following. Batman Lost, number 1. Daredevil, number 595. Despicable Deadpool, number 289. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, number 32. Jessica Jones, number 14. Justice League of America, number 18. Mr. Miracle, number 4. Ms. Marvel, number 24. New Superman, number 17. She-Hulk, number 159. Suicide Squad, number 29. Supergirl, number 15. Superwoman, number 16. Uncanny Avengers, number 29. Venom, number 157. And lastly, X-Men Gold, number 15. The one-star books are the worst of the lot for this week. These are trash. These are the ones you really shouldn't waste your time reading. Superwoman, number 16. You know, I really do get it. I've actually created my own comic book universe, so I know how hard it is to create new characters and then make them connect with the reader. It's even harder with a villain. You've got to give them a tortured backstory and a whole list of brutal crimes to justify the attention of the superhero in the first place, but you can't make them too sympathetic or the reader won't want to see them catch a beating from the hero. I get it. It's hard. But Midnight is such a throwaway character that I'm thinking that Perkins actually pulled her out of his office garbage can because he was running behind and he needed a villain before he hit deadline. I mean, she lacks imagination. She lacks development. It's like this entire story. There hasn't been any official word yet. I did check. But the word on the street is that the Superwoman book is on the chopping block. And I guess somebody decided that, well, hell, if we're going to get canceled, why put any effort into it? At least that's the way this issue feels. X-Men Gold, number 15. This issue sees our not-dead heroes emerging in Mojo World looking to fight their way back to the 616. And all they have to do to get there is fight Spiral and her army of mini-Mojos, break into Mojo's headquarters, and then shut everything down. So, a couple of questions. What the hell is Spiral still doing on Mojo World? I mean, the last I remember, she was raising a preteen runaway back in Uncanny X-Force and was very much her own independent person. So why the hell is she suddenly backing Mojo's play? Second, what the hell is up with the logic of this story? They find the headquarters and establish that Mojo's at the top of this huge-ass tower. There's no stairs, there's no elevators. So what does this team of heroes, a team that contains 5 people who can fly, another that can create moving icicle structures, and another who, just happens to be able to teleport. What do they do when faced by this obstacle? They break down a wall and walk directly into the control room. It's like, wait, what? What kind of dumbass logic is it to move sideways to go up? I mean, what the hell, really? The comic books that are awarded 2 stars are bad. They may have 1 or 2 redeeming features that save them from going on the 1-star list, but they're still probably not worth your time reading. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, number 32. This issue is, of course, the inevitable tie-in with the Metal event, and this time around, the Dawnbreaker and Hal Jordan are going to be pitted against each other in an all-out battle. You know, going in, I really had no expectations because my absolute love of the Green Lantern title is balanced by my authentic feelings of boredom and disinterest when it comes to the entire Metal thing. and reading this deflated matchup didn't really change my opinion of the medal event. It's sort of like watching the last lap of a car race, but every single car on the track has blown out tires and the engine's on fire. I mean, it was very slow, not very exciting at all. And unlike Dawnbreaker #1, this issue lacked the fantastic art and the imagination. It was amazingly disappointing. New Superman #17. I've been watching the new Superman series getting better and better lately, especially after hearing that, DC had originally planned on canceling it after issue 16. It actually increased my expectations of each issue. But unfortunately, this was not a very good idea, apparently, because this particular issue does nobody any favors, much less the continued survival of this title. I mean, the meeting between the Chinese Justice League and the real Justice League, it was inevitable, I suppose. But the fact that this series has made it to 16 issues without forcing it is actually a commendable thing. Unfortunately, when the meeting actually happened, it turned out to be uninspired and meaningless. The disappointment continues, from not only it's the story, but it's also the art. The art looks amateurish, and it's downright bad in some places. I'm seriously hoping that this piss-poor level of storytelling is just a temporary problem, because I was beginning to, like this series, and I don't want it to be canceled. She-Hulk #159. I have to admit that this issue is kind of a hard sell. I mean, for fans of this title, when it was called Hulk, it lacks the focus on trauma and anger and PTSD that was the center of that little bit of She-Hulk history. For the old fans of the character, the fans who've been reading since, the 80s and 90s, it lacks the excitement and the lawyering and the action and the humor and the fourth wall breaking that made She-Hulk interesting in the first place. Even as a jumping on point for brand new readers, it doesn't really work. I mean, this issue is more about setting things up and showing that, hey, this is just a ripoff of Stephen King's Misery than anything else. But though I should say that by no means is this a poorly constructed comic book on a technical level. It's just not a good story. Who knows? Maybe the next issue will be better. I guess we can just hold our breath and watch. The books that get 3 stars aren't all that good, but on the other hand, they're not all that bad either. Sure, go ahead and read them. However, get the 4 and 5 star books first. Ms. Marvel #24. This is the second part of the Northeast Corridor storyline. Kamala Khan is still trying to stop the runaway train, which has become an analogy for everything going on in her personal life. It turns into a breaking point when she starts feeling that maybe the community that she's been protecting doesn't need her anymore. This particular issue does not break any new ground at all, and while it does attempt to delve into the psychology and the mindset of Ms. Marvel, it doesn't actually go anywhere in the end. At its heart, it's basically an adventure story, and there's nothing really wrong with an adventure story. It's not done badly. It just doesn't stand out. As I've said before about other comics, there just isn't a lot of meat on this particular bone. Can you enjoy this story? Sure. Can you enjoy it if you don't read it? Well, yeah, kinda. Suicide Squad #29. This series has hit a bit of a slump. There's been some interesting elements in the story of the original Task Force X, but there's absolutely no progress in this story. The characters on the moon literally walk up to a door in this chapter. That's it. I mean, yeah, there was a character building conversation, but one could argue that, that's what the last issue was for. On the plus side, one of the major downsides to the story up till now was the lack of action, and this issue provides us with a lot of action. Unfortunately, it's kind of meaningless. Despite the action ramping up, the story just grinds to a halt. It's boring. I'm not sure that the cliffhanger ending, which is meant to give us a reason to come back in 2 weeks, I don't think it actually works for that purpose. I don't think it stops the fact that this story slammed the brakes on and has skidded to a stop. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Uncanny Avengers #29. Despite comic books being a visual medium, the artwork is actually less important than the story in the long run. If your story is good enough, readers will forgive mediocre artwork. But if the story is shit, no amount of pretty pictures is going to make it not be shit. I bring this up because the best part of this issue is the artwork. Sean Isaac's work is beautiful, and he just fits with Juan and Ramirez's. It just comes together wonderfully. Unfortunately, Jim Zub's script does not live up to the pretty pictures. Now, I'm not saying that this is a horrible issue, obviously. I gave it 3 stars. I'm just saying that compared to the artwork, the story is mundane. It's unexciting. It's boring even, if you will. And for crying out loud, this has the Juggernaut in it, and he's always a fun villain, and yet we still get a boring story? How does that work? What should be a high point is merely the best of a lot of mediocre. So, there you go. The books that get 4 stars are the good ones. These are the ones that we recommend. They may have 1 or 2 small problems here or there, but nothing that takes away the enjoyment or the quality of the comic book. Despicable Deadpool, number 289. Out of all of the books I'm reviewing this week, I did not expect to be giving Despicable Deadpool 4 stars. I've given the last 4 issues of this title piss poor ratings because they've been piss poor issues. With this one, though, it was a big surprise. It was just, it was great seeing Jerry Dugan step up and start swinging for the fences. He is not reinventing the wheel here, but it is a fun, action-packed issue. The best part is the banter between Deadpool and Cable. It feels like the best back-and-forth dialogue right out of, I don't know, whatever your favorite action movie is. I mean, for me, it's got to be Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon. It felt like that. Admittedly, there are a few minor problems with the story. Namely, a couple of last-minute jokes that come out of nowhere and just aren't quite funny enough to actually qualify as jokes. There's the final twist that ultimately invalidates some of the earlier action. But all in all, this issue was refreshing, especially compared to the last handful of issues that came out of this creative team. This is a good one, guys. Supergirl number 15. I'm going to admit, I'm beginning to get into this series. The last couple of issues have been really, really good. And it's all because of Steve Orlando's storytelling. I mean, it's got a huge Spider-Man vibe going for it. Kara's job at Catco has her writing about how awful Supergirl is. Her parents want her to stay at home and not expose herself to danger. Her friends are beginning to notice how strange she's been acting lately. And, of course, every cop in the city and every government agency wants her to arrest her. All she wants to do is use her powers to help people. This is an amazing jumping on point for people who haven't been reading this title so far. Some of the best parts, they seem to be setting up Mr. Bones as a cigarette-smoking man-style background player who's pulling all the strings. That's an X-Files reference for those of you who are less than 20 years old. If I have to point out any problems at all, it's that there sometimes feels like there's something off about the art. Sometimes Rocha just makes some odd choices. It comes to bad panel setup or visual angles. It's not really a huge problem, but it's noticeable. Venom number 157. On paper, Kraven the Hunter is badly outmatched by Venom. But that said, Mike Costa does just about everything perfect in this issue. He highlights Kraven's cunning and his bloodthirsty nature and his ability to outthink and outplan the person that he's hunting. In fact, if I had to point to a character that was Marvel's version of Batman, it would be Kraven the Hunter. I did want the story to feature the Venom-Kraven direct face-off a bit more than it did, but despite this, it does succeed in demonstrating that Kraven is just as much a threat to Venom as he was to Spider-Man. It also seems that there's a lot of potential in pitting Venom against Spider-Man's old enemies. My only concern with this issue is that it ends on an homage to one of Spider-Man's most iconic scenes. This is cool on one level, but the problem is those homages have become so cliched over the last 50 years, and it has been 50 years since the original, that, these days they're just, okay, when's he going to get around to doing it? Out of all the books that I'm reviewing this time around, the 5-star books are the best. They may not be perfect, but they are pretty damn close. Batman Lost, #1. Despite being easy enough to follow, the story in this issue is anything but straightforward. It takes you through the life and times of Batman, bouncing between Bruce Wayne's past, present, and future. The creative team have come up with a book that is nothing short of amazing. It's like a celebration of the rich history of the entire character. The writers have obviously worked hard, not only to portray the psychology behind Batman, but to make us, the reader, feel it. The art in this issue is just epic, and it's beautiful. About halfway through this book, I suddenly realized that some of the serious care that was taken into creating this issue, it was just an enormous effort, and it was obvious. The entire thing is sensational, and so far it's only been the only metal tie-in that I haven't found completely and totally boring, which is saying something. This one's definitely worth the read. Daredevil 595. Catch the analogy, folks. A shady businessman with questionable connections to organized crime and foreign investors who claims to be a populist despite being a billionaire who's never really had a hard day's work in his life. He's got little ideological motivation besides the desire for more and more wealth and self-aggrandizement, and just who happens to be a malignant, amoral, completely self-centered narcissist, manages to win an important election. Who does that sound like, guys? I gotta say, the amazing part of this issue is that it is less of an anti-Trump story that you might think. Rather, it is a really realistic look at how people who feel disenfranchised might turn to a completely unsavory, corrupt political option if the feeling is that the unsavory, corrupt political option is the only option when it comes to solving their personal problems. It is a powerful political story, and it's done right. And it makes a very powerful point without taking a stand for liberals on one side or conservatives on the other, either way. It's a good read. Jessica Jones, #14. This issue was horrifying, and I mean that. Utterly horrifying. One of the things the story deals with is the greatest single fear a parent can deal with, and that is inescapable danger and the chance of death for your children. And you cannot do anything about it. At one point, honestly, Jessica is asking herself whether she should kill her daughter, who's being controlled by the Purple Man, just to save her own life. Or maybe she should let her daughter kill her and eventually be able to get control back over her own faculties. But then she's got to deal with the fact that even knowing that it was the Purple Man, she would still feel that it was her doing it. The Purple Man, to me, remains the most monstrously evil villain in comic books, and I'm putting him above Darkseid and Thanos in this category. He is just a monster. As a father who considers his kids more important than his own life, this was a hard issue to read, but I'm glad I did because it was an amazingly powerful one. And, that's part of the problem. This issue is just so powerful that when I heard that Bendis was leaving Marvel for DC, the first thing I thought of was how is this title going to be affected? I mean, I'm both excited and scared to see what's going to happen next, but I'm more scared than excited because this is just a perfect issue. What's going to come next? Justice League of America #18. Where the hell has this issue been hiding all this time? I mean, we've been having to wade through that boring crap that was the long Microverse story, only to reach this absolute gem. The irony here is it features a villain I normally cannot stand. I mean, seriously, I've always thought Prometheus was a complete Mary Sue of a bad guy. He's ridiculous. But Steve Orlando apparently figured out how to use him so skillfully that I never once felt the aggravation I normally get from him. The documentary plot was perfect. The way the team slowly figures out something's wrong is perfect. This is just a damn good comic book. You should read it. And I hope that this sudden surge to the top of the reviews is not a one-time thing. I'd hate to see the JLA drop back into the C-list titles because it's supposed to be, a Justice League title. So as long as this can keep up the quality, I'm going to keep reading. This is just amazing. Mr. Miracle number 4. As always, Mr. Miracle is the best book of the week. Every time it shows up, it's the best book of the week. It has been. This is 4 straight 5-star ratings in a row. This issue maintains the pace of the previous issues, mostly due to the continued use of the 9-panel grid. If you are not reading this comic book by now, then you are either seriously not into the New Gods, which I guess is fair enough, or else you're just a stubborn idiot who should have already realized that he needs to be reading this comic book. This is a great series. This is a great, I mean, every issue has been fantastic. Every page in this issue contributes to the overall theme of the entire series, and that is, how does the mind cope with extreme trauma and depression? Scott is so deep into his PTSD that he can't tell what is real and what isn't anymore. Tom King does such a great job giving us subtle details to drive this point home. The pacing and the dialogue of this issue flow like a song. This gives us a bit more insight into Scott Free's mental state, and it's not a good one, guys. He's going to have to come to terms with his problems, and it's getting clearer and clearer that the Day of Reckoning will not be on Scott's timetable. Orion is going to have to be dealt with. Apocalypse is going to have to be dealt with. The Anti-Life Equation, Darkseid, Barda even, it's all going to have to be dealt with, and it's not going to be when Scott wants it dealt with. This is a fantastic series, and it's so worth the read. It's amazing. And now for the roundup and the final scores. This time around, DC Comics had 1 1-star book, 2 2-star books, 1 3-star book, 1 4-star book, and 3 5-star books. Scoring 1 point per star, this gives DC Comics a total score this week of 27 points. I reviewed 8 DC titles, giving them an average score per issue of 3.37. Marvel Comics had 1 1-star book, 1 2-star book, 2 3-star books, 2 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. Again, scoring 1 point per star gives Marvel Comics a total of 27 points. I also reviewed 8 issues from Marvel, giving them an average score of 3.37 as well. So, for the first time ever in the history of I Love Comics Marvel vs. DC reviews, we have a tie, guys. So I guess I have to offer my congratulations to both DC and to Marvel. But those have just been my opinions. What did you think? Have you read these issues? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm right? Let me know in the comments below. And don't just tell me that you think I'm wrong or you think I'm right. Tell me why. That way we might spark up a conversation. If you like what we've done here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. There's also that little notification bell next to the subscribe button so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming videos, and we do have some good stuff upcoming. You know, if you want to help us keep this train rolling, we do have a Patreon page and a VIDME page linked down below. You know, go ahead and hop on over, drop a couple of dollars in the bucket. We would always appreciate it. But even if you don't, I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your attention. Thank you very, very much for watching.